All right, here we are with good friend of ours and good friend of my family, former Avalanche legend, 2001 Stanley Cup champ with your Colorado Avalanche, Bob Hartley. Bob's been around, was around the organization for a long time back then, and people will talk about it later, but tend to forget that he also won a Calder Cup with the Hershey Bears and still has a lot of ties and connection to Hershey. And Bob went on to coach many years in the National Hockey League and then went on to have another successful career overseas in Russia and in Latvia, everywhere he's been. Bob's been a winner. Bob wins everywhere. So welcome to the show, Bob. It's great to have you around, and thanks
Thanks,
for
guys.
giving up a few minutes. I'll just jump right into it, Bob, because I know AJ's dying to ask you a few questions about Kovalenko, that you probably coached against or are very familiar with compared to us here. And this guy stays in the middle of the night to watch games and learn. But again, first of all, I was just telling you off air, we're trying to, we always compare Avalanche 1.0 to Avalanche 2.0, and what a success you were a part of, obviously with my dad, and the connection was so big, and the relationship was so big between the two of you, which, very similar nowadays with Joe, that, when you look back, he learned a lot from you guys, and then Chris McFarland. So my first question would be very simple. It's a stupid question, but it's, what is your recollection of winning the Stanley Cup in 2001, and what the feeling was to finally get that trophy?
Well, those are easy memories to think about because like it's every little boy's dream. Like whether you were in Canada, in the U.S., you're playing pond hockey or street hockey with friends. You're always competing for the Stanley Cup, and here I am in 2001 in Denver. And prior to this, the first 2 years, we all remember the Dallas Stars put us out of the playoffs in Game 7, both years of the semifinals. So you're so close, but at the same time, you're yet so far. And we had an unbelievable season. Not too many times that you can win the President's Trophy and you can win the Stanley Cup. It seems that there's a jinx against teams that perform so well in regular season, whether they run out of gas or run out of emotions, or other teams are so ready to play against them that they beat them out. But throughout the entire playoffs, Vancouver, LA, St. Louis, New Jersey. I remember coming back from New Jersey 2-2, and we're so ready for Game 5 that we're probably too ready. And we tried to run out the Devils in the first period out of our building, and we were everywhere except at the right place, and we got beat out. And the next morning, we got beat that game, and now down 3-2, and we're going to Jersey. And with all the defensive work of the Devils and Brother in net and everything, you say, wow, now we're really facing adversity once again. And players responded so well. Patty was unbelievable in the first period. I remember Adam Foote, close the last minute of first period, comes down right at the blue line and takes a shot right underneath Brother's blocker. And we come back to the locker room. We're ahead 1-0, and we could have easily been down 2-3 goals. So second and third period, it was Avalanche hockey. That goal really gave us lots of jump, lots of confidence, and it carried in Game 7. And what I remember of the last two periods, up 3-0 and down 3-1, the fans basically stood for the final 40 minutes. And I try never to touch the players on line change on the bench, because I'm always scared that coaches on the other team will watch who's next and everything. But we have no choice. We basically yelled constantly in the second, whether it was Brian Trottier, Jacques Cloutier, or myself. We couldn't talk on the bench. It was so loud. Winning, winning is also always special. I've won a few championships on the road, but there's nothing that compared to win at home, in front of our families, our friends, our fans to celebrate right in our own city. It was just magical. Like Joe Sakic scored lots of great goals, but the best pass of his career is when he passed that Stanley Cup to Rebort. Like, I still see it once in a while on TV, and it gives me goosebumps. Like, it's unbelievable. It was such a great story. We rallied around Ray.
Love it. AJ?
Sorry, I'm just reliving the moment from where I was as a kid. So one of the great sports moments of my lifetime, certainly.
And AJ, like I always tell my friends, I had like front row seats to watch probably the battle of the two best goalies in hockey history, Marty Brodeur against Patrick Waugh. Like, how can you get better? And plus, I wish that we could have won in 4 straight. That would have been much easier on everyone. But, like to make it all the way to 7, like it's, like it was magical. Like, getting back home, like my neighbors had put some Stanley Cups on my roof and, like parties for the next 2 weeks. So, like the Broncos had won some championships. So, it's such a great sports city. It's, I just loved it.
Did it make it more special to have to go 7 against the defending champs?
Probably, probably because it was up and down. Like, we play a great game 1, then they beat us in game 2, then we split in Jersey, then game 5, like I want to say we played bad. Like we made bad decisions because I think that we were too anxious. We tried to win the game in the first 5 minutes. We were giving 2-on-1s and 3-on-2, which was uncharacteristic from our hockey club. And it was not from a lack of trying or a lack of effort. It was probably wanting to win so much that we forgot to play the right way.
And AJ, just so you, and a lot of people like fans out there too, Bob was a goalie. So when he says like Brodeur versus Waugh, it's pretty cool when you're a goalie and you're witnessing that. But I'll change the subject a little bit because we have trade deadline next week. And I know we could have you on the show here for the next 3 days because trade deadline, as you know, you can talk all day about it. And I was just telling AJ earlier, like you're a big part of what I consider one that worked. And what I mean by that is Rob Blake, right? Which, and I'll get to my question in a second. One that worked, one that didn't work, Theo, you know what I mean? Fleury, right? And then Ray, one that worked, but delayed by a season, right? So as a coach, because we talk about this and a lot is made all the time about the disruption of the locker room and those 3 things could have been a little touchy because all 3 were different. With the assets going in return, but what can you say as a coach when people talk about the locker room? Oh, I don't want it to affect the locker room. I'm just using Blakey. It could easily affect the locker room, as you know, with Millsy and Detmarsh, and But at the end, it ended up working. But how do you feel when you're in it as a coach? How tough is it to manage?
It's so tough, and it was tough on your dad. It was tough on Pierre too because we love those players. You get a player out of your locker room and you're in contention of winning the Stanley Cup. But we have to remember that we say, oh, it's our year, but it could have been the Red Wings years. It could have been the Devils. It could have been the Dallas Stars. It could have been the St. Louis Blues. Every team wants to win the Stanley Cup. You're not on your own. And the beauty of Pierre is that he was a gambler. He was a gambler. He was always telling me we're going to be part of the parade. We will not be sitting on the sidewalk waving at the parade. And, you have some GMs that are very conservative and they're always competitive, but they never win. Why? Because they're not ready to gamble, because a trade is a gamble. There's no sure thing. You know what you're giving and you think you know what you're getting, but like you say, Theo Fleury was amazing until it got about to the 3rd round, and Theo had personal problems. And gosh, we love Theo, and but we were not aware of those problems, and it ended up costing Theo, and it costed us too. But I remember like the Blakey trade. We win the game, and suddenly it's all over the media that Rob Blake, the trade is done. But the part that we don't know is who's leaving. And Pierre is in the office, in our coach's office, and he's saying like, hey, we're gonna wait for the Adam Deadmarsh and Aaron Miller to come out of the showers, and we're gonna announce, unfortunately, that they've been traded. But no players were coming out of the showers because no one wanted to leave. And it, like today, it was fun, but it got to a point that Pierre told me, Bob, you need to go around the shower area, and everyone was basically stacked one beside the others, and they looked at me like, and I said like, Adam, Millsy, and you need to come, and they were not very happy, and it was one of the probably the toughest things that I had to do as an Avalanche coach, like to go, and we know I was with Aaron Miller from our years with Cornwall. Adam Deadmarsh was part of the Nordiques, the move to Colorado. He was a first-round pick of the organization, the family, and everything. Those trades are tough, but unfortunately, and it's their reality, it's a business.
That's a great answer, and then which leads us to now, as you know, with the Avalanche, which I'm sure you follow, and it's a fun team to follow with McKinnon and McCarr, and and Bednar's done a great job here, having a little bit of longevity, which is nice. And AJ, I know I'm going to pass the baton to you here because we're talking about trade deadline, but also assets that might be joining the Avalanche here in the next couple weeks. So I know he's dying to ask you about one guy in particular.
Yeah, I mean there's a lot of conversation about Nikolai Kovalenko coming over from the KHL, and as somebody that's coached against him, just kind of. What are your thoughts on Kovalenko as a player? What kind of guy are the Avalanche going to be adding to their roster?
Well, the first thing that I can tell you is that Nikolai wants to play for the Avs. Like he feels that he's ready. I'm talking to quite a few friends over there, coaches and players that are around him. And for our viewers, our listeners, Kovalenko is not like tall player, but very strong, very solid, great hands, great vision, really offensive minded. Defensively, he still has some learning to do, but with so many young players, I think that it's the normal way to go about it. The thing that I like about Kovalenko is that he's only 24 years old, but he's already been in the KHL for 7 years. So he came in as basically a 17-year-old kid and was able to crack the lineup and play. And in the KHL, there's some special rules about, youngsters under 20 years old. So you can dress them over the limit of players. So it allows you to, to groom some younger players. So knowing his dad, obviously, Kovalenko, the kids are a great player. Last year, he had an unbelievable season. This year, at 2-3 times in the season, he was injured. Like no major injuries, but enough to, he's only played 42 games this year. So it's not an off year, but it was on the injury front. It was kind of probably the toughest year that he had to go through. But we all know, Eric, you've played, you build character through those injuries. So I don't know what his contract status. I don't know if he's in his last year of his contract with Torpedo. And he's coached by Igor Larionov. So we all know, about his NHL career. So it's probably much easier for him to make the transition. And I'm sure that in many conversations that they have, NHL and Colorado, I'm not sure that Larionov's a big Avalanche fan for the reasons that we know. But at the same time, it was all part of probably one of the greatest rivalries.
When you talk about the transition that Kovalenko has to make, what are some of the major challenges facing him when he gets to the NHL?
The complete game, because obviously he's a goal scorer in like in the KHL, and I don't know where he's going to fit in the Avalanche roster. If Kovalenko can crack the top 6 of the Avalanche, I think that definitely his offensive skills can be very valuable. If he's going to be a third line, well then, and it's all about learning. Learning the defensive game or learning the responsible part of the game. It's just a matter of character. It's a matter of willingness to wanting to do it, and you mature around the game. It's normal for young players coming in the NHL to have some defensive weaknesses or lack of knowing the full game. But especially today with all those individual coaches, like those skilled coaches, kids are coming in, they skate, they shoot. Offensively, they're very gifted. So I think he could be a great fit.
And so the kind of the rough outline of a plan has been that he will join the Avalanche after his team is eliminated from the KHL playoffs. So he's a de facto deadline addition for Colorado this year. Is 15 games enough time for him to make that adjustment going into the playoffs? Or do you think that might be ambitious for the organization?
Well, at the same time, I think that the first factor that we need to look at is the Avalanche injuries. It's pretty tough whether you're a top player and, plus he has no NHL experience to bring in a player in the because now they're going to start, I believe, around next few days, their playoffs, and Torpedo went down a little bit in the last part of the season. So will they win the first round, or they're going to go out, and then will he be able to join the Avalanche? I don't know the answer to my question, but at the same time, depends on the Avalanche roster. If the Avalanche is very healthy, it's always very touchy to bring in someone who has no NHL experience in the lineup. He has no knowledge about his teammates or anything. It's a tough adjustment, but all depend if Bednar feels that they need him and they're confident that he can be a big part of it. He can score goals. There's no doubt about it.
And then in final, your daughter still lives here in Denver, which is awesome. And then, take 2 seconds. Steve, your son that grew up playing hockey, was a goaltender as well here in Denver. And tell us a little bit how Steve's doing and, how his team's doing in the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League.
Yeah, Steve is the head coach of the Rouyn-Noranda Huskies. They're in second place right now in their conference, and obviously he's having lots of fun, and he has a dream to coach in the NHL. But just going back to our years in Denver, it was so much fun. Hockey fans, such a great city, and we all know we had a great hockey team, and it made it fun for the entire family. My daughter was in high school, then she went to DU. My son was part of the Littleton Minor Hockey Association, and they went on to nationals and everything. And then watching DU play and Colorado College and all this, there's so much great hockey, and the rinks were getting built like family sports, and getting that practice rink there. So, it was a great 5 years. I'm a big football fan. I'm a big baseball fan. So watching the Rockies, watching the Broncos and everything, it's not only about hockey. Now I'm at 63 years old. I'm retired in Florida, and, sometimes you go back to the memory lanes and you think about this, and Joe Sakic, and plus I look at the two teams. I look at Avalanche 1.0 and now call it Avalanche 2.0, and you're right, Eric. Before we were on air, we were talking about the similarities. It started in Quebec, the rebuild, and then your dad came in and brought Patrick and brought so many other, he completed the rebuild through trades, and obviously great draft picks. My first year, we had 4 first-round picks. You're a Stanley Cup contender, and you show up to the draft with 4 first-round picks. It was just like unbelievable. And now, obviously, like after our years, it's the cycle. And at one point, you need to restart, to rebuild. And Joe and everyone like started that rebuild with McKinnon and Makar and all those great guys. And you look at the 2 teams right now, we're so similar, like speed, like character, like fun to watch. And again, in a great hockey market, probably one, if not of the best hockey markets in the NHL. So it's fun to watch.
That's about wraps it up, right, AJ? And we can't thank you enough, Bob. And thanks for all the info. And it's always great to catch up with you, and you still can talk, and I love it. I told AJ, I said, don't worry, this guy can talk.
That's great. Very nice meeting you, AJ. And again, hello to all the hockey fans in Denver. You guys treated me and my family so well. Really appreciate my years with you guys.
You're the man, Bob. Thank you very much.
All right. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Salut, Bob. Bye.
We all silly like the mayor.